Imagine this. You are standing inches away from someone who wants to destroy you. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, but literally. A man whose entire intention in this moment is to end your life. There is no door behind you, no ally at your side, no time to prepare. Just you, your breath, and your mind. Would your muscles lock in fear? Would your pulse erupt into chaos? Would your thoughts scatter like birds in a storm? Or could you remain unmoved, as silent as stone, as calm as deep water, as composed as a man who has already accepted every possible outcome? That state, unshakable calm in the face of confrontation, is not fiction. It is a discipline, a way of being, a weapon sharper than any blade. And Miyamoto Musashi mastered it more than any warrior who walked the soil of Japan. Musashi fought over 60 life-or-death duels. He never lost, not once. But what made him terrifying was not only his skill with the sword, it was the stillness behind it. That eerie calmness that no opponent could penetrate. Because Musashi was not merely a swordsman, he was a philosopher of war, a psychologist of conflict, a monk of brutality. And in his writings, in the dusty lines of the Book of Five Rings, he left behind a blueprint. How to stay calm in any confrontation, physical, emotional, psychological, social, or strategic. This is not a guide for soldiers. It is a guide for human beings. Because life confronts you every day in arguments, negotiations, workplace tension, personal relationships, social pressure, or unexpected attacks from people who feed off your reactions. If you can remain calm while others lose control, you win every confrontation before it begins. Tonight, we follow Musashi's mind, not the myth, but the mechanism, not the legend, but the logic. We start with the first concept, a principle capable of removing fear from your body like poison drawn from a wound.
The greatest mistake people make in any confrontation is this. They put themselves at the center of it. When someone challenges them, insults them, interrupts them, or threatens them, they react as if their very identity is being attacked. Their ego surges forward like a shield made of glass, fragile, transparent, easily shattered. Musashi knew the ego was the first thing that must die in battle. In his doctrine, he wrote, "Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world." This is not humility. It is strategy. When you stop taking things personally, you stop bleeding emotional energy. When you detach from your ego, you gain clarity. When you stop making yourself the center of the conflict, you finally see the whole board. Musashi never stepped into a duel thinking, "He insulted me. He embarrassed me. I must defend my honor." That kind of thinking leads to haste. Haste leads to panic. Panic leads to death. Musashi looked at conflict the way a chess grandmaster looks at a board, with detachment, distance, and calculation. When you detach, you become calm. When you're calm, you see clearly. When you see clearly, you can strike without hesitation. Consider the confrontations you face today. A coworker undermines you. A family member provokes you. A stranger insults you. A manipulative person tries to lure you into emotional reactions. The moment you let their words enter your bloodstream, you lose. Musashi's teaching is simple but life-changing. It's not about you. It's about control. The calm person controls the confrontation. The reactive person is controlled by it. Remember this the next time someone tries to provoke you. Do not defend your ego. Do not protect your pride. Let the fire pass through you like smoke. Stay still. Stay clear. Stay free.
When Musashi wrote these words, he wasn't just speaking about swords. He was speaking about the human mind. Most people panic in confrontations because they fixate on one outcome. I must win this argument. I must change their mind. I must overpower them. I must prove them wrong. This fixation blinds them. They lock themselves inside a single possibility, and that prison becomes their downfall. Musashi called it a death sentence. Fixation is the way to defeat. Fluidity is the way to victory. Musashi won because he never fought the same way twice. Sometimes he arrived early. Sometimes he arrived extremely late to unbalance his opponent psychologically. Sometimes he used two swords. Sometimes he used a wooden stick. Sometimes he changed the environment. Sometimes he changed the rhythm. Sometimes he changed absolutely nothing and let the opponent destroy themselves. That unpredictability was his greatest weapon. In modern life, fixation destroys calmness just as surely as it kills fighters. If someone attacks you verbally and your only response is to argue, you lose. If someone expects you to get angry and you deliver exactly that, you lose. If someone pressures you to panic and you panic, you lose. But imagine this. Someone insults you and you simply don't react. They push you, but your expression doesn't change. They challenge you and you stay silent long enough for them to question themselves. This is Musashi's fluidity. Calmness as a strategy. Stillness as a weapon. If you want to stay calm in confrontation, stop clinging to one path. Be adaptable. Be unpredictable. Be formless. Because the person who cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. Most people fear confrontation because they fear losing. And they fear losing because they have defined victory too narrowly. They think the only way to win is to strike harder, argue louder, dominate more aggressively, or overpower force with force. But Musashi saw something deeper. There are always multiple ways to win, and many of them require no fight at all. He wrote, "You must understand that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain. Sometimes the most powerful move is silence. Sometimes the strongest stance is stepping back. Sometimes victory is letting your opponent exhaust themselves. Sometimes the smartest decision in a confrontation is to walk away completely. A confrontational person thrives on reaction. If you deny them that reaction, you starve them. An insecure person thrives on chaos. If you bring calmness, you suffocate them. A manipulator thrives on emotional leverage. If you remain unreadable, you break their tools. Musashi understood something most people never see. Your reaction decides their power. Once you grasp that multiple paths exist, you stop playing their game and begin playing your own. And that shift, that moment of internal liberation, is the birthplace of calmness.
When Miyamoto Musashi wrote, "From one thing, know 10,000 things," he wasn't speaking poetically. He was revealing the foundation of his genius, the ability to see the underlying patterns of every conflict. To remain calm in any confrontation, Musashi didn't rely on raw strength. He relied on understanding. understanding of people, understanding of fear, understanding of human nature, ego, and pressure. Most people believe confrontations are unpredictable, chaotic, explosive, emotional. But to Musashi, confrontation was almost mathematical. Once he understood one truth, he understood countless truths. Once he mastered one pattern, he saw those patterns everywhere. Let's uncover his next lesson.
Musashi did not win duels simply because he swung a sword better. He won because he saw better. When a man stepped in front of him, Musashi wasn't just watching his hands. He watched his breathing, his posture, the tension in his shoulders, the impatience in his eyes, the way he shifted weight before attacking, the hesitation in his stance. He saw 1,000 details most people never notice, and with those details, he predicted the future. To remain calm in any confrontation, you must know what's coming before it arrives. Every human conflict follows patterns. A manipulator repeats their tactics. A bully reuses their threats. A liar exposes themselves in micro-expressions. A jealous person hints at their insecurity. A narcissist reveals themselves in their silence. An aggressor telegraphs their next move through their breathing. Musashi understood all of this intuitively because he studied not just swords, but people. He believed the mind, like a blade, must be sharpened on every surface of life: philosophy, psychology, observation, humility, pattern recognition. When you deeply understand one truth, he implied you suddenly understand 10,000 truths. If you understand fear, you recognize it in others instantly. If you understand insecurity, you see exactly how it drives someone's actions. If you understand your own emotional triggers, you know how others are trying to weaponize theirs. This is why Musashi remained calm. It wasn't superhuman stillness. It was preparation, knowledge, perception sharpened into intuition. Imagine facing confrontation with this power. Before someone finishes speaking, you already see their insecurity, their motive, their frustration, their fear, their attempt to manipulate you, their desire to provoke you, their need for reaction. And when you see it all with clarity, your calmness becomes effortless, because the unknown no longer exists. Most people believe they will suddenly become powerful in conflict. They assume that in a moment of crisis, they will magically become composed, intelligent, tactical, and emotionally stable. Musashi called this a childish fantasy. You do not rise to the level of your expectations. You fall to the level of your training. If you have never practiced calmness, why would you become calm when pressure arrives? If you have never resisted provocation, why would you suddenly resist when the stakes are highest? If you've never strengthened your emotional stability, why would you expect yourself not to panic? Musashi's training was relentless because life itself is relentless. He slept on dirt floors. He trained in isolation. He fought opponents without warning. He confronted danger deliberately. He practiced endurance until discomfort became familiar. His calmness was not talent. It was forged. Here is the truth. You become calm in confrontation only if you train calmness outside of confrontation. Musashi would say this to you today. When someone insults you, practice not reacting. Not because you're weak, but because you're sharpening your mind.
When life frustrates you, practice stillness. Stillness is a discipline, not an accident. When discomfort appears, practice enduring it without panic. Every second you remain composed is a rep you add to your mental strength. When pressure rises, practice slowing your breath. Breath is the leash on chaos. If you control it, you control the moment. When someone tries to manipulate you, practice becoming unreadable. An unreadable person is impossible to corner. Musashi believed the mind must be trained long before the confrontation. So when the confrontation arrives, your calmness activates automatically. You will not have time to think. You will only have what you have trained. Imagine if calmness had become your default reflex. Imagine if your mind naturally settled into stillness the moment tension arose. Imagine your breath remained steady as people tried to provoke you. Imagine if conflict began and you did not flinch. Most people prepare their weapons. Musashi prepared himself. That is why he never lost. Not because his sword was sharp, but because his mind was sharper.
Musashi's philosophy is not ancient. It is eternal. In a world full of emotional reactions, the calm person becomes the apex predator. If you can stop taking things personally, you become unshakable. If you stop fixating on one outcome, you become impossible to predict. If you understand the bigger picture, you become strategic instead of emotional. If you learn to recognize patterns, you become 10 steps ahead of any opponent. And if you train calmness daily, you become undefeatable in the moments that matter most. Most people live in reaction, in fear, in panic, in emotional loops that never break. But you, if you walk Musashi's path, will be different. And the next time someone tries to intimidate you, challenge you, provoke you, or drag you into emotional chaos, you will not panic. You will not tremble. You will not be moved. You will simply look at them with a calmness they will never understand, and in your silence, they will realize they've already lost. We now arrive at the deepest layer of Musashi's philosophy, the internal battlefield, a place where confrontations aren't fought with swords, but with perception, ego, and the ability to remain untouched by what destroys ordinary men. Until now, we've examined Musashi's detachment, his fluidity, his strategic mind, and the training that forged his composure. But all of it leads to one truth. Confrontation is not about defeating the opponent in front of you. It's about mastering the opponent within you. And Musashi understood this better than anyone.
Every confrontation in life, whether an argument, a negotiation, a manipulation attempt, or a silent psychological battle, stems from one internal force: ego. People get angry when their identity is challenged. They panic when their sense of control slips. They become emotional when their image, pride, or expectations are threatened. But Musashi saw ego for what it truly is: a mask made of glass. It looks strong, but it shatters instantly. The ego screams, "How dare they disrespect me? How dare they challenge my position?
How dare they speak to me like that? Musashi's mind whispered the opposite. None of this is about me. The moment ego enters a confrontation, clarity leaves. You stop seeing the situation, you only see your feelings about the situation. That's why people lose control. That's why people become emotional. That's why people crumble under pressure. Musashi refused to let ego participate in conflict. Without ego, nothing is personal. Without ego, nothing is insulting. Without ego, nothing provokes you. And once you stop feeding the ego, the fire inside you goes out. Imagine what confrontations feel like when there's no ego to protect. An insult becomes noise. A threat becomes a tactic. A manipulative comment becomes a pattern. A raised voice becomes information. An aggressive person becomes predictable. Instead of being drawn into the emotional arena, you remain on the mountain, watching the storm from above. This is why Musashi appeared supernaturally calm, not because he lacked emotion, but because he had nothing left to defend. No story captures Musashi's psychology more perfectly than his final legendary duel with Sasaki Kojiro. Kojiro was Japan's celebrated master, famous for his elegance, speed, and lethal sword technique, the swallow cut. Kojiro arrived early, eager, and filled with pride. Musashi arrived hours late, not out of arrogance, but out of intention. He wanted Kojiro agitated. He wanted him frustrated. He wanted him emotionally unbalanced. Kojiro erupted with rage. Musashi stepped off his boat like a monk, silent, centered, carrying a wooden sword he carved from an oar. Kojiro attacked with fury. Musashi watched with calmness. The clash lasted only seconds. One precise strike, Kojiro fell. Musashi walked away, and history remembered the lesson. Anger makes you reckless. Calmness makes you sharp. Kojiro lost not because he lacked skill, but because he lost control of his mind. He allowed emotion to dictate the fight. Musashi allowed strategy to dictate the outcome. Now imagine applying this principle to modern life. When someone tries to provoke you into yelling, you stay silent. When someone pressures you to rush a decision, you slow down. When someone uses aggression, you use clarity. When someone raises their voice, you lower yours. When someone expects you to shatter, you remain still and they break themselves. This is the unseen victory, not the victory of confrontation, but the victory of self-mastery. Musashi's teachings are not ancient tactics meant only for warriors. They are psychological weapons for modern battles. Business pressure, emotional manipulation, arguments, conflicts, power struggles, social tension, financial stress, unexpected attacks, hidden agendas, difficult conversations. Life confronts you daily, and Musashi's code applies everywhere. 1. Do not take things personally. Detached from ego, clarity appears. 2. Do not fixate on one outcome. Fluidity, unpredictability, advantage. 3. Know that there are many paths to win. Strategy greater than emotion. 4. Study patterns. When you understand people, you stay 10 steps ahead. 5. Train daily. Calmness becomes instinct. 6.
Kill the ego. A man without ego is unprovocable. 7. Accept discomfort. If you stop fearing discomfort, confrontation loses its power. 8. Observe without reacting. Stillness shifts psychological control. 9. Let others lose control while you remain unmoved. The calm person dictates the battlefield. Musashi didn't win 60 duels because he fought harder, but because he fought smarter. He didn't overpower enemies, he out-thought them. He didn't fear conflict because he didn't fear outcomes. He didn't panic because he understood patterns. He didn't react emotionally because he had dismantled the ego. He didn't crumble under pressure because he had trained for pressure his entire life. Musashi's message is simple. Calmness is dominance. Calmness is strategy. Calmness is control. Calmness is power. And the next time someone confronts you, tries to intimidate you, tries to manipulate you, tries to pull you into chaos, breathe in, breathe out, and remember, they only win if you react. You win the moment you remain still. Because in a world where everyone is triggered, everyone is emotional, everyone is reactive, the calm person becomes unstoppable. The confrontation ends the moment you refuse to enter it. That is Musashi's final truth. That is the samurai way. That is how you stay calm in any confrontation.